Buddy, and welcome back to Fleur de Lis Services Healing Channel. I'm your host, Todd Dobson. Welcome to the channel. Today we are going to cover why do we need to heal. And this is going to be broken into two different sessions. So there will be a 1 and a 2 that follows. Let's first start with who has something inside of them that requires healing. And the answer to that question can be blanket and pretty simple. Anyone who thinks or has a voice telling them you're not good enough, you're ugly, or not pretty, or not handsome, you're not worthy, no one will ever love you, you're stupid, you're worthless. Any other negative messaging that is running rampant within their head, this is an indication that that person has something inside of them that needs to be healed. The person who has suffered from loss, accidents, health issues, and or has been adopted or without both parents, these are other indicators that there may be issues beneath the surface of this person that requires healing. Now, we've covered in the past what traumas are, and anyone suffering from any trauma, capital T trauma or lowercase t trauma, they require healing, always. Experiencing a fatal accident where someone you love dies, an accident that does physical harm, the death of a loved one, experiences that we cannot understand, accept, or tragic circumstances, these are all forms of trauma. Now, negative programs we've also discussed, and negative programs will always require healing, but these can be more subtle. These can be more difficult to identify where they came from or how, because while we may have experienced negative programming in our formative years, and we may have initially adopted negative programming from caretakers in our formative years, we consistently program ourselves as we move throughout life. Negative programs can be anyone that has no self-confidence, no self-love, no self-acceptance, or one or both parents are racist or tremendously focused on one part of society. A group that thinks that another or different specific group of people causes all of their problems. These are forms of negative programming that are coming up in our thinking and how we process. A child who is constantly being judged, yelled at, criticized, verbally abused, physically abused, and continuously manipulated, that is a child that will have the need for healing because there's the existence of negative programming. A person experiencing repeating patterns within one or multiple portions of their life, all right, a person who is easily triggered, anyone hyper quick to temper, anger, and or rage, all right, someone who is moved to tears, sadness, or depression quickly and easily, a person who is quick to and consistently anxious, a person who is constantly and consistently emotional about everything in life. These are triggers that are indicating there's work to be done beneath the surface. Many of us carry around things, memories, and incidents that we've been unable to release. Even when we think, don't worry about that. It happened so long ago. I'm obviously over it because I don't think about it. Healing should never carry a stigma. Every person I know or have ever met needs help taking care of something from their past. Not many of us seek help to release whatever remains with us, but we all should. So let's talk about what life was like for me before healing. All right? Life as a child was torturous for me. All I wanted was to be like my older brother. He was everything that I was not: charismatic, athletic, intelligent. He made all of the girls and women swoon. For the day and time, he was someone that had swagger. Kenny did more than your average older sibling when it came to taunting, fighting, and demoralizing me, his younger brother. That was before Ken, father figure, told Kenny, "I can't touch him anymore. It's your job to make a man out of him." Kenny increased the amount and the intensity of his taunting because he was given license by Ken to do so. It worsened substantially when Kenny found out that both Ken and Juanita, parents, would excuse his actions while adding their own physical abuses towards me because I either complained or took my own action. His favorite thing was to flick my ears while leaning in to say something that only I would hear, but something truly horrific. Something like, "Who do you want to suck, fag?" Or, "Fags like you take it up the butt." "How does your ass feel, faggot?" We fought, and he always won because he was twice my size. I always ended up beaten up by Kenny, and then he would lie to Ken and Juanita, and I would get beaten by one or both of them. The physical abuses were bad, but the mental cruelty was hideous. Do you know how bad it is to tell the truth, but because anyone else in your family lies or says something different, you get in trouble, you get blamed, you get yelled at, and you get told you're a liar, and in most cases, spanked viciously. It was always my fault because I was the son and the sibling that no one in the family wanted. After Ken permitted Kenny to beat the shit out of me, it became non-stop. Kenny sought instances of new ways to torment me. Any time I would protest, he would beat me 100 times worse than he normally did. It is shameful when neighbor kids and his own friends tried telling him how brutal he was towards me. But that only made him think he was doing a great job and spurred him on to do more or be worse than he was before. The various traumas I experienced in combination with the constant negative programming, mostly by Ken, Juanita, and Kenny, had me with no self-confidence, no self-respect, no belief in myself, thinking I was dumb, beyond stupid, without talent, no one could love me, no one would ever love me, and the inability to change any of it. By the age of 12, I had called a suicide hotline that served the Louisiana area. This was over landlines without caller ID or return call features. So when they kept asking for my phone number and address after telling me I was what I already knew, that I was being abused and they could take me away from all of it. But even after being constantly battered and abused, every child wants their family's love and acceptance, just like I did. High school was okay, but it was also mixed with new forms of family abuse. Daily reinforcement of how stupid and dumb I was because all the teachers compared me to my older sister and Kenny. Kenny spent more time away from home and with friends, drinking and doing drugs, so the beatings became less frequent. but he also molested me for a year and finally raped me because I refused to comply by letting him have intercourse. Ironically, among the few good things from high school were the rumors that I had a large member. Kenny spread those rumors, and yet not one person ever wondered or asked, why and how did a brother know the size of his brother's member? Note to all shy, introverted guys in junior high and high school, start a rumor that you have a prominent member, and the girls, women, will come chasing after you. It didn't matter to the girls who kept asking me out and rubbing up against my crotch that Kenny and Tanya, older brother and younger sister, were the ones responsible for spreading the rumors that I was gay. No one in my family cared about the impact of it being 1984 and 1985 in southern Louisiana, where being gay took your own life out of your hands because so many in the Bible Belt felt it was their job to eradicate all fags. They didn't care because they never liked me, and since I refused to change my sinful ways, if something happened to me, that was my fault, not theirs. The worst was the negative programming. I fought against my nature of knowing that I was dumb. It didn't matter what I tried to do to prove to myself that I was not perverted or disgusting. I worked 3 times harder than everyone and excelled in most jobs. I was 16 years old and managing 5 men twice and 3 times my age at a Winn-Dixie grocery store. I still believe in negative programming and persisted in perpetuating more negative programs similar to those from the family. My life was dismal and with repeating patterns, compounding negative programs, and a steady stream of traumas. I could not keep my life on track for over 3 to 5 years. After 3 years, my life would blow up or disintegrate, with me unable to repair or prevent it. I have made multiple fortunes, always losing them. Nothing told me I was worthy because the existing programming was that I would never be worth it. So life before healing was dismal, disappointing, and left me in a place that had so many holes and just wanting to be loved. You can't expect someone else to love you when you don't love yourself, or in my case, can't love yourself. So what did life look like during and after healing? Life dramatically changed. Everything progressively changed as I created the Melchizedek healing methodology and continued healing all aspects of my life. It took me a long time for the positive results to become noticeable, but I could feel the current of change happening even when they were not recognizable. Every time I became triggered, which was daily, and oftentimes multiple times per day, I would document within my healing journal and or work to heal the triggering events and the associated emotional patterns. I can now go months without being triggered because of my consistent healing efforts. That is, within itself, is an enormous change for me. I could be triggered, and one trigger could be compounded and lead to multiple triggers all in the same day. It didn't matter what triggered me, who triggered me, or how I was triggered. It just mattered that I could be so triggered so often, and yet, as I started healing, it took me a while before I realized you're not being triggered nearly as much any longer. Life has changed so dramatically that I can sometimes lose myself in the constant joy, peace, and grace surrounding me daily. I can experience a bad day, and I do, but that doesn't destroy me as it once did. I can experience a bad week or a bad month, but I know deep within myself that it is just a challenging situation or circumstance, and I am okay with positively moving through them. I am confident. I know I am loved because I love myself unconditionally. I know I am intelligent and do not even consider negative alternatives any longer. Yes, I found out I learned differently than many, but knowing how I learned took courage and knowledge that I am not dumb. I am not the most handsome man in the world, but I like who I am and how I look. I've endured horrifying physical abuse. I have traversed so many traumas and I still exist. To be alive after everything I have gone through is impressive for anyone, and I have done it. I know I am courageous and beautiful just the way that I am. No one else needs to tell me because I recognize it now. That is how healing can change your life. Now let's talk about a client healing. Client healing number 1. No names or identification expressions will be used in order to protect client's anonymity. A client who felt mother's negative energy was causing problems in life was referred to me. The issues were a lack of work, dating, love, etc. When someone comes to me with such issues, the first thing I understand is the stories we tell ourselves. In most cases, part of those stories contain truth, and we must identify the actual root cause as we guide this person into their subconscious and unconscious mind. I refer to this person as a dancer. They fight and refuse to let go of control. They hold on to and refuse to release control as anyone tries to coach them into the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is where we store all memories. Anything and everything we've done in this lifetime is stored within the subconscious and unconscious mind. This does not make them bad when they are a dancer. On the contrary, it proves that they've experienced trauma and much negative programming, and their mind, ego, is defending them by maintaining control. After several attempts to connect this person with their unconscious mind, I had to let them know that we would not be able to work if they persisted in maintaining control and not enabling themselves to connect with their unconscious mind. We would need to try again later when they were ready to proceed. This prompted the person to take time, and we began again by me asking directly if they were ready to heal. Once again, they responded affirmatively. I then asked if they were prepared and able to release control and allow us to access their unconscious mind. They again affirmed their willingness. We dropped into the last instance this person felt their mother was constraining their life. As the story was being told, I recognized how this person centered everything in their world around mother. We reviewed their emotional pattern and followed the threads to the first time they felt this way. The memory we tapped into was one they could not recall, which told me how severe the trauma was how severe the trauma was when this incident occurred. Their conscious and unconscious mind repressed this so deeply in order to protect them. As we worked through the initial events, where they heard their mother telling her sister how she never wanted a child, how bad they were, how unruly they were. She never wanted a child. She took extraordinary precautions to ensure she did not become pregnant, but she had this child anyway. While most of what this 3 to 4 year old child heard wasn't fully understood, the essence of the situation was traumatizing because it explained why the mother had nothing to do with the child then or while they matured and grew into adulthood. The mother was vicious with words and her negative programming of the child. Critical of everything, the child grew up constantly enveloped by negative programming due to the mother's unwant of the child. There was more that was uncovered, but this paints a picture of the impact this person's trauma and the impact of the negative programming they endured throughout their formative and teen years. We worked regularly for a couple of months when this person suddenly noticed they were not being triggered nearly as much as they originally were. They seemed happier and easier to get along with, found a job, and could maintain it, and even started dating. In less than 1 year from the first client meeting, this person was able to transform their life. We only see one another when something profound comes up, but their life is now what they always wanted it to be, all because they found the courage to work towards healing. All right, client healing number 2. Again, no names or identification expressions in order to protect client anonymity. This client came to me because they had worked with various psychotherapists throughout their lifetime, and based on multiple encounters, they carried a very hearty level of distrust and dislike for the industry. 2 loving and caring parents adopted this person as an infant. Because very little information was known about the birth mother and no information at all known about the birth father, this was eventually found to be traumatizing for them. The story this person was telling involved inability to date or love anyone for more than 2 years. They had difficulties making friends due to being introverted. Their relationships were in disarray, including the relationship with their adoptive parents. The parents were always worried and concerned because their child seemed to be in constant pain and moving further and further away from them, even though they all spoke lovingly and fondly about each other. Initially, they revolted at the instant I asked if being adopted could be considered the root cause. There was a blow up in reference to all the cracks they had seen and distrusted before me. I understood the concept was moot discussion point, but my instincts are rarely wrong, so I knew this person would need to conclude for themselves these facts. We discussed the last relationship breakup, and we pursued those details. I queried if most breakups ended in the same manner. They did. We dove into the emotional patterns of this last breakup and followed the threads to the root cause. This person recalled that around the age of 2, they asked their loving, caring, and supportive parents why they didn't look like each other. Their parents explained how they had tried for years to have a child and could not. So they searched until they found them. As soon as they saw this child, they knew and instantly loved it because it was the child they had always wanted. This was the initial trauma setting in. The unconscious mind repressed this information because the damage continued in the form of this person judging, criticizing, and ridiculing themselves for their entire life. They were never good enough for their birth parents, so they could never be good enough for anyone or anything else. If their birth mother couldn't love them, then no one could love them. The negative programming that developed and persisted until we started healing it was persistent, consistent, and relentless. Even the most loving environment which they came from could never prevent the programs that enveloped their life. The fact that the birth mother was a drug addict, the exact drug habits were unknown, but the impacts were physical, psychological, and emotional on this child. This exacerbated why they were not good enough and why no one would ever love them. Healing encompassed over 16 months and with consistent sessions, but they realized in about 4 months how loved they were. At 6 months, a group session with parents proved endearing as parents and child shared what was happening and why. One of the most profound moments was when one of the parents called to tell me how grateful they were for helping their child become the person they are meant to be. This parent was happy to have their child back and not see them in so much pain. Thank you very much for tuning in. Have a wonderful day. I will see you next time.